Elliot Sanders, an 82-year-old man, arrived quietly at Union Station in Washington, D.C., dressed meticulously in his best suit. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the cuffs of his crisp white shirt beneath a well-worn navy blazer. A subtle testament to the care he took, not for show, but because it mattered deeply to him. Elliot carried with him a letter from the widow of his lifelong friend, General Richard Hayes, whose funeral was about to take place at Arlington National Cemetery. The city's buzz around him seemed distant and irrelevant. His purpose was singular and heavy with decades of shared history. As he stepped off the train and felt the brisk morning air, memories flooded back, of childhood games, wartime struggles, and the unbreakable bond forged in the chaos of Vietnam. Despite his stiff gait and the weight of age, Elliot's resolve remained firm. He had traveled far not just to witness a funeral, but to honor a brother in arms, a friend who had shaped his life. Yet, unknown to him, the path ahead would be far from simple. Standing at the cemetery gates, clutching the handwritten note that granted him entry, Elliot faced the cold indifference of official protocol. Though the ceremony buzzed with high-ranking officers and dignitaries, Elliot was invisible. Just another old man at the edge of a crowd that seemed too busy to notice the quiet hero who had once saved a general's life. Walter Jensen arrived at Arlington National Cemetery that morning dressed with quiet dignity. His dark gray suit was freshly pressed, his shoes polished to a soft shine, and in his hand, he held a worn envelope from the widow of his closest friend, General Samuel Hayes. The letter bore clear handwriting, a personal invitation from a woman who knew the depth of their bond. Walter had traveled a long way, carrying memories decades old, memories forged in childhood streets and battlefields far from the polished grounds he now approached. But as he reached the cemetery's entrance, Walter faced a cold, unyielding reality. Two young officers in crisp dress uniforms stood guard, eyes sharp and hands firm. Walter approached them politely, offering the letter and explaining his purpose. "I'm here to honor General Hayes," he said softly. The shorter officer took the envelope, squinting at the handwriting before looking up with a forced smile. "Sir, do you have your name on the official list?" Walter shook his head, his voice calm but edged with quiet desperation. "This was sent by the family liaison. I was told it would be enough." The taller officer exchanged a glance with his comrade. "We need to verify names through the master list. Orders from the family liaison." Walter nodded slowly, understanding the rules but feeling the sting of being turned away. "I've come a long way just to pay respects. That man meant the world to me." Yet the officers remained unmoved. "Without clearance, we can't let you in. This is a high-level event. It's nothing personal." Walter took a step back, heart heavy but hands steady. Around him, guests moved purposefully toward the ceremony, men and women in formal attire, officers with gleaming medals, families clutching programs and tissues. But for Walter, all of that felt distant, like watching through a pane of glass. Whispers passed as people glanced his way, some offering polite nods, others turning away quickly. A woman in black, perhaps a family member, brushed past him, the faint scent of perfume trailing in her wake. Walter stood by the stone wall near the gate, clutching the envelope close. Time passed slowly. He watched as the bugler warmed up, his notes soft and haunting in the morning air. He thought of the battles he and Samuel had endured together, the firefights, the nights spent waiting in trenches, the moments of laughter and fear mingled in equal measure. But now, those shared memories were invisible to the security detail that wouldn't budge. Finally, the ceremony began without him, the voices of chaplains and the folding of flags carrying on while he lingered outside. It wasn't the first time Walter had been overlooked, nor would it be the last. But today, it felt like a deeper wound than any he had ever suffered in combat. Alone and unnoticed, Walter faced the hardest battle of all, not against an enemy with weapons, but against a system that refused to recognize the quiet hero who had once carried a dying man to safety. James Monroe and Samuel Hayes shared a bond that went far beyond ordinary friendship. A bond forged not only in childhood but sealed in the crucible of war. They had met as boys growing up on the rough streets of a small Alabama town, where life was simple but often harsh. James was the quiet kid from the mills, and Samuel was the preacher's son, a natural leader with a strong sense of duty. Despite their differences, they became inseparable, playing stickball in the streets, sharing cold watermelon on hot summer days, and getting into childish fights over nothing at all. Their friendship was tested and strengthened during the Vietnam War. Drafted together in 1967, they faced the unimaginable horrors of combat side by side. One harrowing day, deep in the dense jungle near Kontum Province, their unit was ambushed. Gunfire erupted from the tree lines, bullets tearing through the thick underbrush. Samuel was wounded, a bullet grazing his thigh and a more serious injury puncturing his chest. Without hesitation, James dragged him to cover, clutching him tightly as the two struggled through the mud and chaos. He ignored his own exhaustion and fear, focused solely on keeping Samuel alive. That day, James became more than a friend. He became Samuel's shadow, his protector. After the ambush was broken and reinforcements arrived, the men returned to base, but the experience left an indelible mark on their lives. Samuel often called James his shadow, though never in public, because he knew James was the one who had saved his life. Back home, they rarely spoke of the war. The world outside saw only Samuel in his uniform, receiving medals and recognition, while James quietly returned to his life, unnoticed. Yet, their bond endured through silent visits, shared memories, and mutual respect. When Samuel later rose to the rank of general, the medals and ceremonies never overshadowed the deep connection they had built in the mud and gunfire. It was a bond that would last a lifetime, unspoken but unwavering, a brotherhood born from the shared trials of youth and battle. As the funeral service for General Samuel Hayes commenced beneath the green canopy at Arlington National Cemetery, a quiet tension lingered near the entrance where Walter Jensen stood alone, clutching the faded envelope that bore the handwritten invitation from the general's widow. Despite his dignified appearance and heartfelt purpose, Walter had been denied entry multiple times, his name absent from the official list and his presence dismissed by young officers following strict protocol. But then, through the crowd of uniformed officers, dignitaries, and grieving family members, emerged General Raymond Caldwell, a man whose reputation for decisive leadership and respect for loyalty was well known throughout the military. His 4 silver stars gleamed in the sunlight, reflecting not only his rank but the weight of responsibility he carried. As he made his way purposefully toward the gate, the murmurs of the crowd hushed into curious silence. General Caldwell's eyes fell upon Walter, standing quietly yet resolutely apart from the ceremony. Without hesitation, Caldwell strode past confused officers and guests alike, his boots striking the pavement with a determined rhythm that commanded attention. He approached the young guards who had barred Walter's way, ignoring their hurried protests and formalities. In a calm but firm voice, Caldwell asked, "Who is that man standing outside the gate?" The sergeant hesitated, then gestured toward Walter. Without waiting for further explanations, Caldwell stepped forward and looked Walter over with a depth that transcended mere appearance. Then, in a voice loud enough for those nearby to hear, he said, "Sir, what is your name?" Walter took a tentative step forward and replied, "Walter Jensen." "You knew General Hayes?" Caldwell asked. Walter's voice caught, but he steadied himself. "Since we were boys, we served together in Vietnam." For a moment, silence fell. Then General Caldwell lifted his right hand in a crisp military salute, holding it with a respect and gravity rarely seen outside of battlefield ceremonies. Walter blinked, caught off guard by the honor. Caldwell lowered his hand and extended his arm toward Walter. "Sir, would you allow me the honor of escorting you to your seat?" Walter could barely find words. He nodded, grateful yet overwhelmed, as the general linked arms with him. They walked side by side down the aisle, the crowd parting silently in their wake. The whispered conversation ceased, all eyes turning to witness this moment of genuine respect that defied protocol and hierarchy. The young officers who had once barred Walter's way stepped aside without a word, their previous rigidity replaced by reverence. At the front row, Beckett's widow, Rebecca, rose with tears glistening in her eyes, taking Walter's hand in a warm, familiar grip. "I told you he'd come," she whispered, her voice trembling. Walter squeezed her hand gently, the weight of decades of friendship and sacrifice settling over him. As the service continued, Walter sat in the place that had been reserved for him, not by official decree or meticulous planning, but by a man who understood that true loyalty and honor are measured by more than lists or medals. This unexpected gesture of recognition transformed what had begun as exclusion and neglect into a profound affirmation of brotherhood, proving that sometimes, all it takes is one person with the courage to see beyond the rules and do what is right. As Walter Jensen and General Raymond Caldwell approached the front row of the funeral service, the murmurs that had filled the crowd slowly faded into a reverent silence. Walter's heart pounded with a mixture of relief and quiet pride as he took the seat that had been quietly reserved for him, an empty chair next to Rebecca Hayes, the widow of his lifelong friend, General Samuel Hayes. Rebecca's eyes shimmered with tears as she reached out and gently clasped Walter's hand, whispering with a trembling voice, "I told you he'd come." Walter returned her squeeze with a soft smile, feeling the weight of decades of friendship and unspoken loyalty settle between them. The ceremony continued around them, the chaplain's prayers, the bugler's solemn notes, the folding of the flag draped over the casket, but for Walter, the moment was deeply personal. Sitting there, beside the woman who had stood by Samuel's side through it all, he felt a profound sense of belonging. The other guests, many of whom had never known the true depth of the bond between Walter and Samuel, now looked on with newfound understanding as whispers spread through the crowd about the old man escorted by the four-star general. This was no ordinary funeral attendee. This was a brother in arms, a man who had shared the trials of youth and war, whose loyalty had never wavered even when recognition seemed elusive. Throughout the service, Walter held close a worn photo tucked safely inside his coat, a faded image of two young soldiers, muddy and smiling, with Samuel's arm draped over Walter's shoulder. That photo was a silent testament to years of camaraderie and sacrifice, the kind that could never be captured by medals or headlines. As the ceremony drew to a close, the folded American flag was presented to Rebecca. With steady hands, she reached over and passed the flag to Walter, saying simply, "Tom wanted you to have this." Walter accepted the flag reverently, holding it close to his chest as if it contained the very spirit of their friendship. It was a sacred trust, a symbol of the battles fought and the brotherhood that had endured beyond the battlefield. Later, when the crowd began to disperse, Rebecca handed Walter a sealed envelope, bearing only his name in Samuel's unmistakable handwriting. Inside was a letter written days before Samuel's passing, a letter that spoke of regret, gratitude, and an unbreakable bond that transcended rank or ceremony. Samuel wrote of how, despite the honors and titles, it was Walter who had earned the right to stand by his side. The letter was a testament to a friendship that had endured through war, loss, and time, a reminder that true honor is found not in public accolades but in the quiet, steadfast presence of those who stand beside us when it matters most. Sitting there with the letter in his hands and the flag on his lap, Walter knew this was not just a farewell, it was a celebration of a lifetime shared. The ceremony had given him a seat, but more importantly, it had given him the recognition he had quietly carried in his heart for all those years. In that moment, surrounded by strangers, Walter felt deeply seen, honored not for what he wore or the names on lists, but for the enduring brotherhood that defined his life with Samuel Hayes. After the funeral ceremony concluded and most guests had begun to disperse, Walter Jensen remained seated, clutching the folded American flag carefully on his lap. Beside him, the room had emptied, the echoes of solemn prayers and bugle calls fading into quiet whispers. Then, Rebecca Hayes, the widow of General Samuel Hayes, leaned over to Walter with a gentle smile and pulled from her handbag a small, sealed envelope addressed simply to him, penned in Samuel's unmistakable handwriting. Walter's hands trembled slightly as he took the envelope, his fingers tracing the curves of his name on the cream-colored stationery. He waited patiently until the crowd thinned and the cemetery staff had begun collecting chairs before carefully breaking the seal. As he unfolded the letter, his eyes scanned the thick paper, slightly smudged where the pen had pressed hard, an intimate reminder that this was a message penned in the final days of a man who understood the weight of every word. Samuel's letter was filled with raw honesty and deep gratitude, reflecting on their shared past and the quiet sacrifices that had bound them as brothers in arms. He confessed his struggle to write it, unsure how to address the one man who had known him long before the medals, the ranks, and the public accolades. Samuel recalled their time together in Vietnam's jungles, the perilous days when bullets whizzed past and death seemed inevitable. He spoke not of his own survival but of Walter's unwavering courage, the friend who had cared more for him than for himself. "You don't need rank to save a man's life," the letter read. "You don't need a title to be a brother. You just need to care more about someone else than yourself." Samuel admitted that while he had accepted honors and ceremonies, he had never publicly acknowledged Walter's role in his life, a regret he wished to rectify in this private message. He wrote of the night they escaped the swampy ambush together, the makeshift armband he had stitched for Walter to carry a piece of him, even if fate had torn them apart. The letter ended with a poignant hope that Walter would find his rightful place at the front row of the funeral, not because of protocol but because he had earned it in every way that truly mattered. Walter's jaw tightened as he read, emotions welling up that he had long kept buried. For years, he had carried the silent burden of being the unsung hero, the shadow who never sought recognition. But now, through Samuel's words, that lifetime of quiet loyalty was given voice. He folded the letter slowly and pressed it against the flag, feeling the weight of their shared history settle deep within him. It was more than a letter. It was a testament to friendship, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds formed far from the eyes of the world. In that moment, Walter understood that this farewell was not an end, but a continuation of a story written in mud, sweat, and quiet devotion. Though the world might never fully know their tale, Walter had Samuel's words to carry him forward, a reminder that true honor resides not in medals or ceremonies, but in the hearts of those who stand by each other, no matter what. And with that, Walter finally felt the profound peace that comes from being truly seen and deeply remembered. After the solemn funeral and the moments of recognition that had finally come his way, Walter Jensen returned to his quiet life in Birmingham with a calm resolve. Despite the attention that brief moment in Washington, D.C. had brought him, Walter never sought the spotlight. He went about his days as he always had, fixing a broken window screen for a neighbor, lending a hand wherever needed, and volunteering once a week at the local high school library. There, amidst the dusty shelves and the soft rustle of turning pages, Walter found a peaceful refuge. Sometimes, when no one was watching, he would doze off quietly in the reading chair, a faint smile on his weathered face. People around town recognized him now, often approaching him in the grocery store or at church, calling him that man from the funeral. They wanted to hear the story, to grasp the weight of the salute given by a four-star general or the moment he was led to a reserved seat beside the widow of General Samuel Hayes. Walter would nod politely, shake a hand or two, and share a few words, but he never told the whole story, not because he wished to keep secrets, but because some stories live fully only between two people, and one of those people was gone. Life moved on in its quiet rhythms. One day, while walking through a small neighborhood park, Walter noticed a young soldier sitting alone on a bench, restless and preoccupied. Without a word, Walter took a seat beside him, resting his hands on his cane, offering silent companionship. The young man glanced over and recognized him from the viral video showing General Raymond Caldwell's respectful salute and the ceremony at Arlington. "My granddad showed me that," the soldier said quietly. "Said that's how men used to carry themselves." Walter smiled softly, eyes gazing toward the trees swaying gently in the breeze. "We just tried not to forget each other," he replied. The soldier nodded, understanding the weight behind those words. They sat in silence for a few moments, the kind of silence that only those who have witnessed the quiet struggles of life and war can share. When Walter finally rose to leave, the young man stood as well, offering a crisp salute, not to the cameras, not for an audience, but as one man honoring another. Walter tipped his hat in return, knowing that for him, and for the friend he had lost, it was never about public recognition or ceremonies. It was about showing up, keeping promises, and being seen when it truly counted. In the end, Walter's story was a testament to the enduring power of loyalty, humility, and the quiet dignity of a life lived in service to others. A reminder that some of the most profound acts of courage and love happen far from the spotlight. In moments shared between friends who refused to be forgotten. In the days following the funeral of General Samuel Hayes, the story of Walter Jensen, the quiet, weathered man who had been denied entry, then honored by a 4-star general salute, spread like wildfire across the internet and social media. Videos of General Raymond Caldwell halting the ceremony to personally escort Walter to the front row went viral, racking up over 1 million views in just hours. Headlines praised the moment as a powerful testament to loyalty and respect, capturing hearts around the nation. Yet, amidst the sudden flood of attention, Walter remained remarkably humble. He never sought the spotlight, nor did he relish the newfound recognition. To him, the viral video was just a fleeting glimpse of a friendship that had spanned decades, a friendship that had never needed cameras or applause to be meaningful. Local reporters, veterans groups, and even podcast producers reached out to Walter, eager to hear the full story behind the moment that had touched so many. But Walter's response was always the same: "I already said what I needed to say." The depth of his bond with Samuel Hayes wasn't something easily captured in interviews or soundbites. It was etched in years of shared experiences, silent sacrifices, and unspoken understanding. Life returned to its usual pace for Walter. He continued his humble routines, fixing neighbors' homes, volunteering at the school library, and living quietly in his community. Yet, the impact of that day lingered quietly in the background, a reminder to those who witnessed it that true honor is often invisible to the world until someone chooses to acknowledge it. One afternoon, while walking through a neighborhood park, Walter noticed a young soldier sitting alone on a bench, his posture tense and restless. Without a word, Walter sat beside him, offering silent companionship. The young man soon recognized him from the viral footage and remarked, "My granddad showed me that video. Said that's how men used to carry themselves." Walter smiled softly, eyes drifting toward the trees swaying gently in the breeze. "We just tried not to forget each other," he replied quietly. They sat together in a comfortable silence, a moment shared between two generations bound by respect and the weight of service. When Walter rose to leave, the young soldier stood as well and offered a crisp salute, not for cameras or crowds, but as a genuine gesture between comrades. Walter tipped his hat in return, knowing that in the end, it had never been about recognition or ceremony. It was about showing up, keeping promises, and being truly seen by those who mattered most. Walter's story, now etched into the hearts of thousands, stands as a powerful reminder that sometimes the greatest acts of courage and love happen quietly, far from the spotlight, in moments shared between friends who refuse to be forgotten. The story of Walter Jensen and his lifelong friendship with General Samuel Hayes teaches us a profound lesson about loyalty, honor, and the quiet power of showing up for the people who matter most. Walter's journey was not marked by public accolades or grand ceremonies but by steadfast devotion, sacrifice, and an unwavering presence in the darkest moments of life. From their childhood days spent playing stickball on dusty streets, through the brutal trials of war in Vietnam, to the quiet recognition at a funeral decades later, their bond transcended rank, fame, and the formalities of military protocol. Walter's experience reminds us that true honor is not about the medals we earn or the recognition we receive but about the relationships we build and the promises we keep. It is about being the person who stands by your friend when the world turns its back, who carries you through pain and fear not for glory but because you care. This story moves beyond military brotherhood. It is a universal message about humanity and compassion. We all have people in our lives who quietly support us, who hold space for us without seeking acknowledgement, who embody love in its most selfless form. Too often, society values loud achievements over silent acts of kindness and loyalty. Yet it is these very acts that shape the core of who we are. Walter's humility after the viral moment shows us that true courage does not seek the spotlight. Instead, it finds strength in quiet resilience and the deep satisfaction of a life well lived through service to others. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of someone who has stood by you, maybe a friend, a family member, or even yourself, take a moment to honor that bond. Share this story with someone who deserves to be remembered. And if you have a moment, please leave a comment below sharing your own stories of loyalty and friendship. Your voice matters, and together we can celebrate the quiet heroes in our lives. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us all what truly matters. Because in the end, it's not the titles or ceremonies that define us, it's the love and loyalty we carry through the years.